Hello, everyone. I'm Ken Davis, the CEO of the Mount Sinai Health System. And we're going to be talking today to two of my colleagues that I've known for decades who are real innovators, Eric Gendon and John Puskas. Eric is the chair of our Department of Ear, Nose, and Throat, ENT, and a real innovator around tracheal transplants that he's going to talk about. And John is a full professor at Mount Sinai in the Department of Cardiothoracic Surgery, and he is the head of our cardiothoracic surgery program at Mount Sinai Morningside. He's going to be talking about some of the innovative things that he's done in coronary artery bypass grafting. So let's start with a question about innovation and what it means and how you got there. Eric, what do you think differentiates you characterologically from so many other people in your field who are not necessarily innovators, who are happy to take business as usual? And then, John, you pick it up for the same question. What made you take risks, be innovative? Eric?
Yeah, I think that there is a group of people, we work with these people, and you know who they are, where we've all practiced medicine and surgery for a period of time, and we see gaps in the way we take care of patients. Some of this has resulted from a slowdown in innovation, either as a result of the cost or medical legal risk or regulatory constraints. But I think that what separates innovators maybe from the non-innovators is that we tend to see the gaps in the way we take care of patients, the problems, things that we can improve upon, and are willing to kind of take the risk, ask the question, how do we make patient care better? And what do we have to do to get there? And so it's really need-based innovation. It's saying there's a need to fix this problem. How do we do it? And then it's gathering all of the people that are other innovators that are willing to pitch in, that are willing to help, being at a place where there's a cultural sense that embraces innovation and being very, very focused on the problem at hand.
I want to take you back, though, before you were a surgeon. Let's even think about you're in high school or even younger. Would somebody have identified some characteristics in you that said, boy, that guy's going to be different. He's going to be an innovator?
Yeah, I think that we're all kind of built the same. We identify problems. We're the kids that take apart the clock radios. We're the kids that are constantly trying to fix the broken things in the house. We're the kids that are always asking the question, why? Why is that? I was known for driving my dad crazy because it was always a question of, why is it that way? Why can't we think of that differently? And I think that that's a real help when it comes to surgical innovation, because you have to ask the question, why? Is medical dictum, is the dogma that surrounds much of what we do really deserve it?
Right. John, what made you become an innovator? And take us back to the beginning, when you're 8 years old.
Yeah. Among the many lessons my father taught me, the one that I think was most important to him was the phrase, think for yourself. Don't let other people think for you. So I think that a belief in independent thought is a necessary foundation for innovation. I grew up in institutions, educational institutions that valued research in combination with teaching and engaged students in the process of creating new knowledge. And when I became a medical doctor and then a cardiothoracic surgeon, I recognized that all the things I've been taught had been learned, that knowledge had been created by our predecessors. We see far because we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so I came to feel as an academic cardiovascular surgeon that we had an innovation imperative. It's our moral obligation to ensure that the cardiothoracic surgical care that our children's generation have is better, more effective, less invasive than the cardiothoracic surgical care I was taught to provide to my parent generation.
So, Eric, what you've done, no one else has done before. The odds seemed against you. Tell us the process of how long it took, whether at any time it was so frustrating you almost gave up, and what it felt like to finally do that surgery and transplant trachea.
So, this is an idea we were talking about earlier that started when I was a medical student, having witnessed a patient who had extensive airway disease. We could remove the tumor, but we couldn't put the patient back together. And it was astonishing to me that was the problem. And so right off the bat, very early as a second year medical student, we started with back of the envelope thoughts on how could we rebuild the trachea? How could we maybe transplant the trachea? And at the time, there was a medical dogma that was clear as could be. You cannot do this. So, I spent 20 something years in the laboratory looking at blood supply, the immunobiology, understanding the graft. And we were actually ready to go to do the first transplant in 2006. We had received regulatory clearance. And if you remember at that time, the stem cell era had broken overnight, and they were building heart valves and ears and cartilage and certainly tracheas, all from stem cells. And we actually withdrew from the program. We thought that this was going to be the end of transplantation as we knew it. You'd be able to build these organs in a petri dish. And that ultimately failed. It turned out that stem cells hold great promise, but it's not ready for prime time. And so we went from a state of elation, ready to go, to depression because we thought we're done. All 20 years of work had been for nothing, to let's get back in the saddle and make this happen. And so there's a lot of ups and downs, and you have to embrace the risk. But I think more importantly, it's a desire to stay with the program, to not give up. It's being persistent and realizing that you've got to have some blind confidence in what you think is going to make for a better world for our patients.
Okay, John, I have a tough question for you. Lots of patients will come for coronary artery bypass grafting, unlike tracheal transplant. And they have to make a choice. How do they find someone who's on the cutting edge? How do they know they're getting an innovator? How do they know they're getting cutting edge care and the best care? What do they have to ask?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is evolving as digital technology makes us all more connected as a society. Patients are now frequently looking on the internet for answers. And as you know, that's a two-edged sword. I think patients should ask, how experienced is that surgeon? Am I going to have my heart stopped? Will you manipulate the aorta in order to do my operation? What is my risk of stroke in your hands? And how many arterial bypass grafts will I get? Or will you use vein grafts the way the operation was originally conceived in the 1970s?
Well, tell us more about that, because there's a lot of sophistication to what you talked about. Talk about arteries versus veins. Why shouldn't they touch a heart? What does all that stuff mean? How do they understand that it's important?
Veins, of course, are taken from the leg typically for coronary bypass surgery. And that's the way the operation was originally invented in the mid 1960s. However, veins live in our legs in a very low pressure environment. When we transplant them to the heart to use for coronary bypass grafts, they now face a very high pressure environment. And that high pressure, they're not designed to face. And typically those veins develop atherosclerosis and fail. About half of them will fail in about 10 years, which is okay if the patient is 80, not okay if the patient is 50. So we developed techniques to harvest and use artery grafts from elsewhere in the body. With these arteries, we're able to carefully construct 3, 4, 5 bypasses. And now the patient has graft tissue that is designed for that high pressure and will perform for their entire lives. I have yet to reoperate on a patient of mine who had all arterial bypass grafting done because of graft failure. They just don't fail. And earlier this year, I had the great privilege of running the New York City Marathon with one of my own patients who had 4 arterial bypasses. That's quite a stress test for him. And he finished upright.
All right. All right. Eric, since you did the transplant, have you had a lot of requests now? What do you see as the future? And are other people going to try to do this? Tell us what's gone on since.
Yeah, so it's, as you know, we've received a lot of attention, and we're evaluating at any time 8, 9, 10 patients from all over the country, actually all over the world, who require some form of tracheal or tracheoesophageal reconstruction. We're at a very difficult point because on the one hand, you've got a potential solution, although high risk. And on the other hand, you don't want to push a new surgery. It has to evolve. It has to take footing. So we're carefully picking and choosing the patients. We want good outcomes. Ultimately, this is all about helping the patient. And so as we evolve and as we do more of these surgeries, and we do have some probably patients lined up and will be candidates in the near future, we're going to determine, can we start to apply this, not to just the critically ill, but to those patients that are tracheostomy dependent. They have a tube in their throat, a tube in their airway. They live that way. They can't speak. It's not life-threatening, but it's a significant impact on their quality of life. And eventually, like all of these new surgeries, the evolution of it will be that we'll be able to apply it a little bit more easily and a little bit more liberally as we feel more comfortable with the procedure. So, for right now, we're focused on the sickest and the most ill patients, but hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to more widely apply it to patients who it would just impact their quality of life in a positive way.
That's great. And I'm going to give John the last word, which is, what do you see as the next innovation in cardiothoracic surgery? What should we be waiting for?
I was interested to listen to Eric talk about cautiously evolving the operation. And I think that gets to the simple issue that innovation must be continuous. It doesn't ever stop. And so we continue to evolve in how we choose to deploy arterial grafts, which patients we use them in, how do we mitigate against the other various risks of heart surgery. And we're blessed, I think, to have a lot of industry partners helping us evolve other areas of cardiac surgery. Valvular surgery is largely going to a transcatheter approach. And we're developing partnerships with our cardiologists to do hybrid therapies where we combine the best of percutaneous or catheter-based therapies with stents and minimally invasive robotic bypass grafting. I'd like to get to the point where we do all arterial bypass grafting without opening the chest at all. And we've done a very few of those for 2-vessel disease. I'd like to get to be able to do that for 4-vessel disease. So the innovation doesn't end. It's iterative, and we continue to push the envelope. And frankly, Dr. Davis, we're grateful to be here at Mount Sinai, where that kind of behavior is part of our DNA.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned that you were blessed, and I feel I'm blessed because the two of you are part of Mount Sinai and making us special. So thank you both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.